Welcome to Parshas Chayei, which you can find on page 106. We welcome back all those from Eretz Yisrael and other good places. You can find the parsha on page 106, Chayei Sarah. A parsha that describes the burial of Sarah and the first sovereign purchase of land in Eretz Yisrael, which is Hebron. And then we have the section that deals with finding a mate, a wife for Yitzchak. And we are introduced to Rivka. And it ends off with the burial of Avraham. Now, to introduce what we are going to try to deal with here in this parasha, there is a word that we use in our tradition often, which is machloikes. Machloket. But it doesn't carry the same weight as machloikes. Machloikes has so much more life to it.
What does it mean?
What does it mean? You asked that. Last year, I was in chat during exams, and one of the Israeli teachers was very upset about something. Welcome back. So this Israeli teacher's office. So I walk over to her, she's older than me, and I say, "What?" People are watching. Okay, how does that sound? I walk over to her and I say, "What's bothering you?" A veteran teacher. She says to me in Hebrew, In other words, during exam, she wonders, says, how can you be studying about Judaism and not know what machloket is? It's like the bulk of our religion is machloket. That's what she noted. Which is so true, but machloikis is really a much better word. What now? Machloikis, controversy or disagreement or disputes, they make their ugly appearance because in most cases when you have these disputes between parties on any issue, there perhaps is a little bit of a good intention there for the sake of heaven of two parties trying to figure out how to fulfill our responsibility and our obligation and sticking to our tradition, but they are often infused with egos and selfishness and the desire of the human being to be right? That's how it works. So if I'm going to argue with you, true, there's a point I want to make because I want the Jewish tradition to live on and I believe that I have the proper opinion. But if you disagree with me, you're hurting my ego. I want to be right? So when I'm going to take a strong position, it will obviously be infused with me. Now, this is a statement that was made. There was a great rabbi, Rabbi Milevsky, a rabbi in Prague, took over at the end of the 18th century this very prominent and very well-respected rabbinic position. And he is the one that teaches that from his experience, there's no such thing that there is a machloikis that is purely for the sake of heaven. There are those that are good machloikis, and then 98% are for the sake of heaven. Those are from the better ones. But they will always have within it the desire of the person. Now, on the other hand, what it appears and what he notes is that the last pure machlokas l'shem shamayim, or in the words of the Mishnah, ezu machloket shu l'shem shamayim. When can you say that there is indeed a disagreement, a dispute, where both parties are simply interested in figuring out the truth and being sure that our tradition has continuity? Because if you are practicing your religion with a bluff, it's not going to be long-lasting. Who were the last two parties that did it for the sake of heaven? Hillel and Shammai, right? And most probably a few of their students that surrounded them. Obviously, there were riffraff that joined these teams and became more like a soccer game. In other words, you have now in Israel a dispute within the Haredi community on very, very significant issues, right? So I deep down believe that the great rabbis are for the sake of heaven. They are surrounded by people that the percentage is a little bit down there. But then there's a whole slew of people that for them this is a sport game. It's basically a sport game that I'm a follower of. You are a follower of Hapoel Tel Aviv. and I'm a follower of, or I'll speak languages, so of Manchester United, okay, and Liverpool, and I'm a follower of Rav Auerbach, and you're a follower of Steinman. So it's basically, it's like a sports game. And just as there are hooligans in sports, right, that they're going to go ahead, right, I have some English people here? No. Okay.
Never have.
No. So just as you have in people in sports that act like animals for their team, the same will apply when you will have a dispute between rabbinic parties, not the core rabbis, obviously, but the people that are following it as a good sport. So most probably, I believe at least, that when it comes to Shammai and Hillel, they, as the Mishnah tells us, were 100% for the sake of heaven, but there were those that followed it because the Jerusalem Talmud tells us that there was one time an incident where they killed one another. Shammai and Hillel. So it wasn't Shammai and Hillel, because Talmud tells us they got along actually. But rather it was from the outside, people that were not really interested in the truth, but in the excitement. Boy, it's very exciting. Go to an Hafganah, you can go ahead and burn a garbage can. That's like very, very exciting. So that's our history about machloikes. Now, so we're going to go ahead and analyze the dispute that is for the sake of heaven, Shammai and Hillel. And what the Mishnah tells us, something very, very interesting, that a machlokes, Hillel and Shammai, we're not just stating that they're good people. That's not what the Mishnah is teaching us. The Mishnah uses the words sofo lehitkayem, meaning sofo lehitkayem. Putting you to work today. Sofo lehitkayem. It will, what? It will endure. It will endure. Now, what does it mean for endure? Do we want a dispute to endure? Is that what we're trying to achieve? Well, my father would explain that each party makes a contribution to Judaism. Even if there is an opinion that's not followed, there is a point that opinion makes, and by making that point, even if we don't follow it, there's something we could learn from it. And if you sit down in the morning and only study the words of Shammai, you are still studying Torah, because he has made a contribution, even in areas that we do not follow. Okay, now, we've heard often about Shammai and Hillel, that there's a personality difference there. That Shammai is more interested in fulfilling the responsibility we have to achieve things in the spiritual realm, right? Less interested in the welfare of people, because we have a tradition to preserve and a relationship to the unseen that we have to be sure that endures. And on the other hand, Hillel has this sensitivity to people, right? You know, ohevet habriot, love people, mikarvan la Torah, the patience the man had, that he had to deal with some real Dracobs, we are told, but he had the patience and understanding that this is what my religion is about. It's about people. And we need actually both. And we also understand, by the way, that there are people with different personalities, right? There are those that love interacting with people, and they could spend hours, and it energizes them by interacting with people. And then there are those that after 15 minutes, they already go, you know, enough is enough, right? I have a relative, I'm not going to mention names. I have a very close relative that I enjoy meeting him and talking with him, but after 15 minutes, something happens, right? After 15 minutes, that's it. He has to go back to studying or writing one of his books. Like, he has to go ahead and go back to his world, because more than 15 minutes you can't waste. That's by some, right? So there are different personalities, we understand that. I'm blessed, we're blessed. The Baruch Hashem, our two oldest sons are very close in age. But they're very, very different in that respect. That one of them would love sitting there and schmoozing with people, and he's a brilliant socializer, because it'll immediately pick up what people want and what they're interested in. And the other one wants to go ahead and, you know, study whatever it is. Will be, you know, an actuary, whatever it is, he'll be focusing on his studies. Different personalities, and they obviously both make a contribution to the world. You need both, no question about that. Now, you know, to give you an example of Hillel and Shammai. A few days ago, we studied here in Shul the idea called something called a makom kavua. That when you pray, it's considered proper, ideal, to have what we would call a permanent location, a location where you go ahead and you designate it for your prayer. Makom kavua. So now, someone will open the Shulchan Aruch and learn that there's a concept called a makom kavua and get all inspired, because this is the location where I speak to God. He comes into shul once, right? You come in at 10:15, and believe it or not, someone is in your seat.
Not a B'nai
Not a big Believe it or not, Alan, I heard, unfortunately, in a situation of someone walking into the Ezra Snashim, Alan, listen to this, and you know how it is sometimes, it's quite empty, and a person walks in and goes to the one person that's sitting at the seat, that's my makom kavua. By the way, just for the record. So these things do happen in all places. So you are inspired, makom kavua, but then you go ahead and you cause someone to feel unwanted, right? Imagine that you're a stranger, you come to a shul, you sit down, right? And there, might as well put a spring there, that if you don't go ahead and activate it, you're going to be shot out of your seat. So, how would Shammai act? How would Shammai act? And I'm not saying for sure Shammai, but let's say a Shammai personality. Shammai personality, Shulchan Aruch says makom kavua. You're sitting in my makom kavua. My tefillah is not going to be the same. I'm not going to relate to the spiritual realm. The conversation with God Almighty will be weakened. Makom kavua, please leave. Hillel, on the other hand, will walk in and realize, there's a person here. And this person, perhaps he's a sensitive person. And perhaps if the first word that someone says to him in a foreign synagogue, you walk into a shul, and the first thing someone says to him, no one says hello to him, right? No one welcomes him. But then the first word is, get out of my seat, right? How is he going to feel? So he'll say, you know what, makom kavua, very nice. I'll try to be next to that location, and if I'm within 4 amos of it, that is good enough. Hillel, Shammai, different personalities. We pass it like Hillel, by the way. Yes?
Thank God.
Appropriate to have a makom kavua?
It seems to be, one of the earlier commentators, the Meiri, notes that helps in your focus. When you are familiar with the environment, right? It is somewhere where you perhaps trained yourself to concentrate. So there's a benefit there in a makom kavua. There's a benefit. And there has to be flexibility. They do say that if it's close enough, it's also good. But there is a benefit there. So for Shammai, this benefit is everything. For Hillel, it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing. But don't go ahead and kick someone out. I mean, that's absurd, right? That's what Hillel would say. We follow Hillel, but at the same time, there's something we could learn from Shammai, that it is important, right? Focus is important. Shammai makes a contribution as well. This is what we are told. And the point I would like to make is that in our Judaism, there seems to be a benefit. We benefit from the fact that there's diversity, right? The fact that that there are different groups and different outlooks. And that if you walk down the streets in Yerushalayim, you will see all kind of different people with different approaches, right? You're going to go ahead and see the Haredi Jew, and then you're going to send the Hasidic Shtreimel, and then you're going to see the Kippah Sugad, and the Nachman fellow dancing on a bus that's going 45 miles an hour. All of them make some kind of contribution. I am not going to be turning into a Breslover, but at the same time, if I'm a little bit on a down, right, it is nice to see that there are people that could be on a high, right? Whatever mechanisms they use to reach that high, right? There is a benefit in seeing, so you can learn from diversity. When we're a colorful nation, it is interesting, it's exciting, right? And that's why, I like shuls, when you land up in Israel, I like shuls where people look different, because when they look different, it indicates that we understand that with all those differences, we are one nation, and we can learn from one another. This is what we are told when it relates to Jewish practice. Now, what we're going to see in this week's Parsha is that when it comes to the building of a Jewish home, the same idea exists. That when it comes to a shidduch, because that's what's occurring in this week's Parsha, there are actually some benefits when there are some differences in personalities. Right? You're familiar with the concept of the shidduchim idea, right? I'll give you a minute to regain your ability to breathe. So the shidduchim, I need more than a minute to breathe about the shidduchim parsha, because Kenai Nahara, at this point, 3 of my kids are involved in it. 3 of my kids, right? Yeah, will have been involved. And yes, it's that. Correct. It's that. Now, you always, and it could be very draining, and Miriam gets about 99.9% of the credit of dealing with it, and I perhaps am not being fair by only giving her that amount, because she makes the calls, but often there's that question of personality. Like, is he outgoing? Is he not outgoing? Is he quiet? Is he loud? Right? And these are questions which I believe are not so relevant, because I'm more interested in knowing is, in other words, if let's say you're doing research into a boy, you want to hear from his roommate, right? And the question is, if someone sat once on his pillow, right? Did he go crazy? Did he pull out a baseball bat and start swinging? Those are the things I want to know. In other words, if he's a mensch, that's more important to me about the details of personalities. Then there's the question that people ask, what kind of tablecloth they use on Shabbos. You've heard very important things, right? Critically important, you say. Okay, so we'll have to start doing research and start.
Have they ever used plastic?
They use plastic. So there is an agency in Lakewood that has a spy agency that follows the other family on Friday, right? And they check what kind of items they buy for Shabbos, and they report back. And they tell you if they use a 3-hour candle or a 4-hour candle. So worry not, these things are taken care of. Now, with that, what I am trying to present to you is the idea that there is actually a benefit in a balance. And this is what Rav Hirsch actually notes, that when you read about the prohibition of marrying relatives, it is also this idea that you make a contribution where there are different ways of looking at things, right? Different personalities, actually. They have to have a common goal. They have to see Judaism the same way. Right? They have to have the same understanding of the value of people, for example. But when it comes to personalities, when there are, just as we have a Hillel and a Shammai, perhaps you could actually have personalities that are a little bit different, and they complement one another. And that's what we are going to be seeing in this week's portion. What we're going to do is figure out the personality of Yitzchak, and understand that if we really appreciate Yitzchak, we will recognize that he needs a very unique partner that is going to be fulfilled by Rivka. And the key word of what we are looking for in Rivka is obviously Gmilut Chasadim. That's what we are interested in. And we will see why Yitzchak needs such a wife. But to introduce Rivka, the Parsha actually introduces someone that is the complete opposite, to contrast. In other words, when you want to go ahead and see something, you have, if you want to go ahead and make a flyer, and you want to have yellow letters in the flyer, you have to have a black background. So this black background here is going to be our Ephron. So we're going to talk about Ephron to appreciate Rivka, and then understand why Yitzchak needs a Rivka. That's what we're going to do today. How does that sound? Good. Okay. So we're going to start with the Parsha itself. Some of the material we covered in the past, but Avraham arrives and he eulogizes his wife, and then he begins the process of looking for a very specific lot. And in verse 8 on page 106, which is in the beginning of Parashat Chayei Sarah, he makes a request to meet Ephron. Ayin Pei Reish Vav Nun. Ephron, a word that you could see in it, the word afar. And he makes a request for a specific type of cave, the Machpelah cave. Now, if you turn to verse 11, Ephron makes his appearance in verse 11 as a very, very generous person. A very, very generous person. And he turns to Avraham. Now remember, Avraham at this point is a very well-respected individual in that region. It is through his kindness that he became well-known as a decent person and a leader. And an interaction with the leader is something that, even in our culture, but especially in the past, was a sign of greatness for a person. I'm sure you've been to offices of people where they have pictures of those people that they met. Now today it's much easier because today you could go ahead and take a selfie, right? You could just walk over to any celebrity or world leader. And when President Trump arrived in Israel and walked down the red carpet, there was a Chaver Knesset, although a Chaver Knesset, not one who is a minister, but rather he's probably number 30 in the Likud out of 30. And he is a real, a chutzpahdik fellow. His name, no name perhaps. And as Trump is walking down and greeting the Chavrei Knesset, this fellow turns and says, "Mr. President, can I do selfie with you?" And Trump didn't know what hit him. And this fellow pulls out his phone, and you see Netanyahu like saying, "Oh no, oh my God!" Like this is how we are welcoming a world leader by asking him for a selfie, right? But people enjoy having, a picture with someone that is well known. Indicates perhaps that you are a somebody, and you've walked into offices of people that they have a whole, collection of pictures of who they met and who they interacted with. Fine, wonderful. For Ephron, this moment of greatness is this interaction, or the fact that Avraham Avinu needs something from him. But he wants to appear very generous, and he is not willing to take the money on the surface. So in verse 11, Lo Adoni Shemaeni, listen to me, he says to Avraham, Hasadeh natati lach. You should know, I'm giving you the field. And I'm also giving you the cave which you've asked for. Go ahead and bury your dead. It's interesting to note that the generosity of Ephron is so great that Avraham only wants a cave, and he is offering him not just the cave, but also a field next to it. Now, Avraham responds that, listen, I want to pay for it. And this is in verse 13. Natati kesef asadeh. It is already given. I want to pay for it. It seems like Abraham Avinu has an understanding that you bury a dead in land that is yours, right? Not one that in a few years from now someone's going to want to go ahead and build a mall there, and they're going to ask to move the grave. He wanted complete ownership. Complete ownership is achieved by paying for it, so therefore he wants to pay. And he makes it so clear already, the money's already given. And in verse 15, this Ephron responds, listen to me, land that is worth 400 shekel kesef, mahi. In other words, what he's really saying here is, listen, the land is worth 400 shekel kesef. But because we are so close, right, I'm important, you're important, it's considered an insignificant gift, just take it. So in verse 15, Ephron is still offering the field for free. He's offering the field and the cave for free. But he does mention the price, right? So it's like the famous story which I've mentioned. Of you ask someone for a favor to go to a Shoppers Drug Mart, and they come back, and you say, thank you so much for picking up the goods, and how much is it? And the person says, no, I'm not taking money. You say, come on, I want to give you the money. I don't want you. He says, look, come on. What's $16.38 between me and you? Like, what is it? It's not. So you understand very well by the fact that they spell out the precise amount that is what they are interested in. And therefore, in verse 16, Vayishma Avraham el Ephron. Avraham heeded. He understood exactly what's happening here. And he gives to Ephron the kesef, he gives him the money, the 400 shekel kesef, and these were very a significant currency that was negotiable, and that is what occurs, and that's how he purchases the field. Now it's interesting to note that Ephron, who makes his appearance in his name with a vav, in verse 16, when Ephron actually receives the money, he is spelled with a vav, and we related the fact that in our tradition, the number 400 is viewed as the max. The number 400 is considered like the highest amount. It's like when someone says today, I would not give $1 million. Even if you give me $1 million, I would never do that. So in those days, it was 400. The highest numerical value, the letter Taf, is 400. The 400 is viewed as a max, right? And the numerical value of the words Ra'ain, a person that has an evil eye, right? He wants it all for himself. So if you do the it adds up the resh and the ayin is 270, and then the ayin itself is 70, 10, and 50. It adds up to 400. 400 is a symbol of someone that is a ra'ayin. He wants it all. And it's interesting that the currency here is 400, the 400 shekel. And suddenly when Ephron here walks away, number one, with the money, that's what he wanted, but number two, with the pride. Because he could walk around telling people for eternity that me and Avraham Avinu were like buddies. I was willing to give him a field. He forced me. I had no choice. I had to take the money. But you should know I'm a very generous person. I was willing to give it to Avraham Avinu for free. I have a record. It's in the Torah, right? That's what he was telling people. Ephron wanted it all. His concern was for himself. He was a Mr. 400, and therefore in verse 16, when his name appears, it is an Ephron, Ein, Pei, Resh, Nun. So if you add it up, you get, without the Vav, it is 400 also. Right? 70, 80, 250. Ephron's Mr. Everything for me. And that's how we get Hebron. So now, if this week's portion wants to tell us about what we are looking for is a woman of chesed, that is what we are going to find in Rivka. There's a great contrast there. What's she interested in? Providing for the needs of others. And therefore we have in the next chapter the journey that Avraham makes. What's interesting to note is that the Gemalim appear in this week's portion, if I'm not mistaken, 18 times. Earlier in the Torah, they're only mentioned once. This is a portion of the Gamal, right? It's the camel. Why specifically the Gamal? So number one, it relates to the word Gmilut Chasadim. But in addition, it's an entity that took care of its own needs by filling its body with water, but then you can make the long 2-week journey in the wilderness and take care of others, not yourself. That's a chesed. It's an act of kindness. When you are satiated, you're okay. You are here to provide for others. That's what the Gamal symbolizes, and that is what's happening here. That it is a parasha of Gemilut Chasadim. So we know the story. She provides the water, and she's very, very generous. And eventually, she is taken as the wife. We're going to have to move forward to the end of the parsha. But what we do understand, there is no question, Rivka symbolizes chesed. She has the personality of valuing the interaction with someone else and what you could do for someone else. Because when you have the natural tendency to want to interact with people, it could be used for the good, it could be used for the bad. In other words, you could have a person that their desire is always interact and party with people. Well, that's a selfish use of the fact that you are outgoing. On the other hand, the individual who enjoys interacting with people, but recognizes what a service you could provide by always having a good line and uplifting the spirit of others and bringing happiness to others, that is a proper use of the personality and a proper use of chesed. This is Rivka. Rivka has the ability to take care of the need of Eliezer, not afraid of interacting with the stranger. Pure chesed. That is what Rivka is about. But we'll see very soon why Yitzchak needs such a right. But you're going to have to, so you can have one hand on page 118, but beforehand, I need you to briefly go to Perek Tetzain, Pasuk Yudalet, which is page 72, okay? So 72 and 118, and this will clarify a few things, hopefully. Now, remember Hagar? Mm-hmm. Hagar. She had her own Hajj, right? The Hajj, you make a journey. So Hajar, that's how it's pronounced really. Hajar had her own Hajj. She had a Hajj. She was sent out by Avram Avinu, by Sarah. Nevertheless, in our tradition, we have room for her. It's interesting always to note that her child Yishmael, with all the words we use to describe Yishmael, the bottom line is it was a very Jewish name. It was a very Jewish name. We even find a Kohen Gadol by the name of Ishmael. At some point, I don't know if there are any Ishmaels among even among Israelis. Like Nimrod still have, right? But yeah, Zevel and Nimrod, yeah, Nimrod, boina. Tafsik lizrok avanim Nimrod. But on the other hand, Ishmael, you don't find Ishmael so much. It would like, if someone has an opportunity, you're in Israel and you're bored, if you could go through the phone book, it would be nice to see if there is Ishmael. Now, it is very possible.
Hagar there is. I know it has.
Hagar yesh. Hagar, okay. She likes traveling or not? Hajj. So Ishmael, it is possible that with the growth of Islam, it became a name we avoided. In other words, it will be an interesting study to see Maybe someone could sit through the Cairo Gniza and look through documents up until the 7th century and after the 7th century. But Ishmael, nevertheless, is a very Jewish name because we value him. And in our tradition, he does tshuva, which is an optimistic way to look at our struggle with Islam, that eventually they will accept us. Right? We believe that. We deep down believe that Ishmael eventually is going to be acceptance. And perhaps we should have some level of sensitivity. Right? I'm not saying to give away anything, but at least a level of sensitivity and give some credit for those that are trying at least to have some kind of dialogue, but this is politics, we're going to put that aside. Now, Hagar lives in the household of Avraham Avinu. What was the household of Avraham Avinu? It was, you know, like a 3-day Yom Tov and all family members are by you. Have you ever experienced that? No. And how things are flying, right? There's not one moment. The kitchen, it's like a meal ends and a meal starts. And it just, imagine that 365 days a year, perhaps Yom Kippur not, right? In other words, that was Avraham Avinu's household. It was a very active place. The man philosophically believed that what you do in this world is you interact with others, you take care of their needs. By taking care of their physical needs, you could remind them of their spiritual identity, you could inspire them, you could elevate them. That is Avraham Avinu, but he's non-stop. And even in Israel, you hear stories today of people, right, that have that ability, that they're every Shabbat, there was 20, 30 people. Some incredible stories that you hear, people that have, number one, you have to have that personality, because if that's not your personality, right, forget it. That's not what you're here to achieve in this world. You have to know yourself. It's a very big problem in Jewish education when it becomes a one-size-fits-all. When someone is inspired to be something, and they're not, that's not what they're cut out to be. Very, very problematic. Judaism, what Judaism needs a series of inspirational individuals, and we say to a person, figure out who you are, and then we'll link you to a specific type of personality, and he is the one that should inspire you. It could be a big churban, a big problem if we work with everyone trying to be a Moshe Rabbeinu or everyone trying to be an Avram Avinu. But Avram Avinu has that personality, and it is a very, very active place. And there are angels that appear there. Angels meaning when you are fulfilling the spiritual mission, there's a relationship with God and manifests itself with angels making their appearance. Now, Hagar is sent away from that environment, and she's in a very calm environment, right? Can you imagine that? After a hectic Yom Tov, you go on a quiet vacation to a beach somewhere, and there's nothing happening. Can you imagine the contrast, right? For Avraham Avinu, the silence was probably painful. For someone like me, right, like a normal, like average human being, who would be like, this is unbelievable. Quiet, right? Sometimes quiet is the best sound. Like Miriam mentioned to me that someone mentioned that for when you're dealing with little kinderlach, right, you have to enjoy every moment of quiet. So, for example, if you buckle the 2-3 babies in the car and you close the door and then you make your way around the car to get to the driver's side and you have a few minutes of them buckled and quiet, you could even enjoy those few seconds, right? That's what we are told. So now, Hagar has this experience. She has this experience and she's at this well. And on page 72, God communicates with her at that well. She has a spiritual experience at a silent well. So we are told there, after she has this interaction, page 72, verse 13, Vatikra Shem Hashem, so she named the location, or she called the name of Hashem, who spoke to her, that Ata, you God, is Kel Ro'i. You are a God of vision. I had a vision. But she's quite impressed that she could have a vision. Could I have seen even after having seen? Meaning, by Avram Avinu in that environment, meaning the teacher of Judaism at that time was telling humanity that the way you interact with God is by action. Interacting with people, that is how you have a spiritual experience. She learned something new now, that you could have a spiritual experience in silence, by meditating. You could actually also have a spiritual experience. And therefore she names this be'er, she names this well. In verse 14, Be'er lachai ro'i, that this is a well of either the living one, or that you could have a vision of Chai, of the living God. What do we mean by the living God? We sometimes, in our tradition, we always talk about a relationship with God in Olam Haba. We are believers that a person can have a relationship with God in this world. For Avraham Avinu, it's interactions. For others, it is in a calm. It is in appreciating the calm. That you could live and have a re'iyah of God, a re'iyah of God. You hear what she's saying basically here? That this is a well that symbolizes for me that I can have a relationship with God even without action, by just meditating and by just thinking of Him, I can have a relationship and a re'iyah with the living God. Earlier we talked about Shammai and Hillel, right? So there's an interesting Mishnah that talks about the type of sacrifices that were brought in the Bet HaMikdash every single Chag. And we are told that one of them was called a Korban Re'iyah, Reish, Aleph, Yud Hey, that has to do with vision. And the other one was known as a Korban Chagiga, a Korban of celebration. The Re'iyah was all burnt, what we call Olah, all burnt. The Chagiga, you're supposed to celebrate. So you walk away with a portion, you give the Kohen a portion, obviously. You go ahead and burn a section as well to remind you that everything's from God. But the reality is that Chagiga is for you to be Chogeg. And that's why we call it a Chag, because you bring a Chagiga. So you have a Re'iyah and a Chagiga. Now if I would ask you, which one should have more value? Now you want to buy these two korbanot, and you want to put money into them because you are obligated to bring both, and each one symbolizes a very significant idea. One is a relationship to God, and one is a relationship with others because you are chogeg. You don't do the chagiga alone, you do it with members of your family and perhaps even friends. Which one should be more expensive? A fair question? What if I tell you that Shammai and Hillel have a disagreement on that matter? Okay? Now, what would Shammai say? Which one should have more value?
Shammai?
Shammai. Re'iyah. What about Hillel?
Chagiga.
Says the Mishnah. Bet Shammai omrim. Hare'iyah shtei kesef. 2. Chagiga only 1 ma'a kesef. No. Okay, so you hear what Shammai says. Re'iyah 2. Hillel omer, Re'iyah 1. Chagiga, shtei kesef. Works well. Makes a lot of sense. Chagiga, Re'iyah. Now, the experience of a Re'iyah is one that we have to really appreciate. The ability to have in life a moment where you just meditate and appreciate love. Appreciate what life has. To sit down and appreciate, that is viewed as a spiritual experience. It is one that if you have the personality of Avraham Avinu, it doesn't talk to you so much. But if you have the personality of Yitzchak, to go to a well like this well, a be'er symbolizes water, a spirit, just as water sustains us, spirituality sustains us. So Yitzchak obviously would connect well to a be'er that is about lachai, that the living should have this re'iyah, this experience of appearance in front of God, or a vision of God, or God seeing you. It fits well into the Yitzchak personality. Yitzchak is not Avraham. He's not running such a household. He is more interested in self-development and enjoying what the world is. It's interesting that if you look at our tefillot, Shachrit, Mincha, Ma'ariv. Shacharit, we are told, was established by Avraham Avinu. Morning, right? The beginning. It's the beginning of the Jewish journey. Yaakov was the patriarch of darkness. He had to experience a galut. Ma'ariv is darkness. It's the idea that we have the ability to pray even if we don't have clarity. In the morning, right after the Shema, we say Emet v'yatziv v'nachon, that things are established and clear. During the day, things are clear. At night, things are not so clear when there's darkness. You have to have emunah. So after our Kriyat Shema, we say Emet ve'emunah kol zot. What was Yitzchak all about? What is the Mincha prayer? So Mincha relates to Menucha, that you could relate to God, right? You're sitting there, you have the ability to find a few moments of relaxation. they could actually become moments of spirituality. You think about the Almighty, you think about the fact that every breath is a gift. And kol ha-neshama tehalelka, every neshima, with every breath, there's oxygen, I could breathe. It was created by God. Thank you, God. You could meditate, right? You don't need a yoga mat to achieve this, that you could go ahead and experience and have a minucha. If you look at the Tfilat Minchav Shabbat, it talks all about minucha, rest. It's all about rest. You could appreciate things when you are resting. Unfortunately, there is a term that's used of people who are addicted to chaos. Right? They always have to be doing something, right? You can't sit down, can you sit a few minutes in a jacuzzi? Some people simply can't. What do you mean sitting? I got to do something. You could train your mind to just appreciate what we have, right? No question about that. That's a Yitzchak personality. The Yitzchak personality would obviously fit in to the experience that Hagar had, where she is separating herself and recognizing that there are angels or spirituality even when you are away from the household of Avraham. Okay? That's what we are told. Rav Kook notes that we end our Shmona Esrei with saying that the day will come, there's going to be a minucha. Eventually we believe in this idea of a calm that will exist in the world, and Va'arva Hashem minchat Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. The mincha means literally a meal offering, but it symbolizes a rest to the world. Now with that, Rivka is Mrs. Chesed. Rivka is taking over in many ways the role of Avraham. Yitzchak needs that. So let's go back to Yitzchak. What page was that when we had to go back to? What was that?
118.
118.
Yeah, 118. So what's happening? They meet Yitzchak. I talk about the fact that on Sukkot we do the Na'anuim. On Sukkot, we take the lulav and esrog, and we do these shakings during the Hallel. When do we do those shakings? So we do it when we say Hodu Lashem Kitov Ki Lolom Chazdo, and then also when we turn to God and we say Ana Hashem Hoshiana. There are two. So this is really we are taking these species and we are stating and we are relating to God with it, either with Ana Hashem Hoshiana, which we all understand that prayer. God, right? Hoshiana, we need salvation. We're going through difficulties. There are many, many challenges we face as individuals, as a nation. Ana Hashem Hoshiana. Makes sense to go ahead and shake things for that. But we also have to have that ability of saying, Hodu Lashem Kitov, Ki Lolom Chazdo. Meaning, everything is calm. Everything is calm. Calm should not become the enemy, right? Calm could be very dangerous. Because then suddenly this tendency that we have to make things different, right? You create problems, right? There's many people get into trouble when things are calm. Many people stay out of trouble when they are busy. We as Jews have to train ourselves that even when things are calm, we could declare, Hodu Lashem Kitov. Thank you, God. Let's praise Him and let's have gratitude because things are good. This is what we have to have the ability of. And this is what Yitzchak is going to do. So let's go. Let's finally have the shidduch. Let's end this parsha in a very romantic way because here we have Rivka. So let's go to page 118. And she's writing on page 61. And they arrive on page 118, page 118, verse 62. Are you ready for the shidduch? Okay, so where does Yitzchak come from? Yitzchak ba. Mibo, he comes from having gone to his meditating location. Where and what location does he choose for meditation based on his personality? Be'er lachai ro'i, from this well of relating to God, experiencing God while you are living. This is Yitzchak. That's his personality. And then in next verse we are told that he's praying, that he's supplicating. Many of the traditional commentators note that this relates to sicha, which is tefillah. And what does he see? The first thing he sees are in verse 63, Gmalim, Gmilut Chesed. He sees Chesed here coming, right? This is the beginning of the shidduch. Now, she is in awe of him, and this is what we are told in verse 64, 65, that she inclined when she's on the camel, she falls from it, she covers herself. This is actually going to indicate that this is a unique type of marriage, where she's in awe of him, where in Avraham and Sarah, Avraham does something, and Sarah doesn't agree. Sarah walks in and says, Avraham, you're not doing it, you're doing it another way. And he says, yes, ma'am, right? That's the type of marriage they have. Yitzchak and Rivka is a very different marriage, and it starts off right here. But eventually he does marry her, and they build a Jewish home, and they have their own issues with Esav, but that's in the future. But for now, right, they're having their Sheva brachas, and they are celebrating. But we get this idea that there's different personalities here, and the different personalities, really, they complement one another. Yitzchak himself goes through a journey of some adjustment, which we'll read in the future, but for the time being, Rivka is the one that brings the chesed into the household, and is very much needed for the personality who is a be'er lachai ro'i. So that's what we have for today. And I do thank you all for coming, and everyone have a wonderful week, and we see you be'ezrat Hashem next week.